I won't allow you to go back to your hometown for childbirth.
That's what my mill told me, so I reluctantly canceled my plans to go back to my hometown for the birth. After the birth, when my mother came to help, my husband flew into a rage, saying, "What? Of course, I'm upset. Why are you doing things on your own?" Furthermore, my mill started into saying, "You're our DIL, aren't you? Why are you letting strangers into our house?" And she ended up driving my mother away. I'm just furious with these selfish people. I'll never forgive this. My name is Jessica. I'm a 27-year-old stay-at-home mom. Until last year, I was working at a company, but I quit when I got pregnant. I thought about taking maternity leave, but I decided I wanted to focus on childcare. My husband, Ethan, was supportive of this decision. Ethan does express concern about my health, asking, "Are you okay?" But he's just saying that. He doesn't take any action. I would be happy if he helped with things like taking out the trash, cleaning up after meals, vacuuming, or hanging the laundry, but he doesn't do any household chores at all. Apparently, his mother did everything for him, and he was raised being told that he didn't have to do anything. Ethan has completely taken on his mother's attitude, always saying, "Housework is the wife's job." Even when we were both working before the pregnancy, I was the one doing all the household chores. Even if Ethan got home early and I was working late, he would be lounging on the sofa, fiddling with his phone, and asking me as soon as I got home, "Isn't dinner ready yet? Or you better do the laundry quickly or it won't dry." I had given up expecting anything from him, but I thought surely things would change once I got pregnant. However, Ethan didn't change at all. In fact, he's become even more troublesome.
Do you think our child is more important than me? Don't neglect me just because we have a child.
These are some of the things my husband says, and I'm very fed up with it. He doesn't help with anything, and yet I'm immobilized by morning sickness. What am I supposed to do? The solution I came up with was to ask for help from my mother. My parents' house is just a 10-minute bike ride away. Fortunately, my mother, who is in her mid-50s, is still very active and rides her bike smoothly. When I'm feeling too sick to move, I ask her to help with shopping, cooking, and cleaning the house. But it's only occasionally, not every day. Ethan doesn't like this arrangement. When I tell him that my mother came over, he gets furious.
Why are you letting a stranger into our house?
Stranger? She's my mother. Your mom comes over too, doesn't she?
It's different with my parents. You married into our family, so your own mother has become a stranger. Don't call her over without my permission.
What kind of outdated thinking is this? Sometimes I wonder if Ethan is actually in his 60s, not his 20s. While holding my forehead in frustration, I think about this absurd logic. I wouldn't need to ask my mom for help if you did something. I feel nauseous from morning sickness, and it's hard to even move. If you were more considerate of me, I wouldn't need to call my mom. I argued back, but Ethan retorted, "Why should I, tired from work, have to do anything? You're a monster." I have so much I want to say, but getting more worked up would affect the baby. Stress is the last thing I need during pregnancy, but it seems to be constantly there, thanks to my husband.
I don't want to face your parents. Make sure they're gone before I get home, okay?
And with that awful remark, Ethan left for work. As usual, he left without cleaning up after breakfast. While I was sighing and placing the used dishes in the sink, I thought, I want to go home, and felt an urge to return to my hometown soon. But honestly, I can understand not wanting to meet the in-laws too much. No matter how good the relationship is, they are still people with whom you have no blood relation. However, if he dislikes my parents and doesn't want them at our house, then it should be fair.
Just stopped by nearby, got tired, need to rest.
Thinking this with a forced smile on my face, I faced Dorothy, my mill, who arrived suddenly without any notice. Even when I messaged my husband, "Your mom came over without calling first," he just replied, "What's the problem with my mom coming over?" There is a big problem.
It's hot today. I'm so thirsty. Jessica, get me some cold juice.
I only have coffee.
What? Such an inconsiderate deal. Then go buy it.
Wait, I should go?
Who else is here? You're not expecting me, an old lady, to go, are you? That's ridiculous.
That's exactly what I'm thinking. Expecting a pregnant woman to go shopping, that's ridiculous. Dorothy always shows up unannounced, demanding one thing after another. Sometimes she stays for lunch too. Even when I suggest getting takeout, she says, "Don't waste my son's hard-earned money. At least cook something." I'm pregnant and exhausted. But when I mention using the money I earned while I was working, she'd say, "Then get the best quality lobster." You know, I sometimes feel like giving her a knuckle sandwich right on her temple. It's not just that. I can't clean or do laundry as I'd like, so naturally, the house is a mess. Seeing this, Dorothy says, "At least do some cleaning," and makes me do it. With my belly getting bigger, even vacuuming is a struggle. Yet, Dorothy demands perfection, saying, "What are you looking at? There's dust at your feet?" Even when I ask her to let me know before she comes, she retorts, "Why do I need to inform anyone before visiting my son's house?" You know, if I weren't pregnant, I might want to put a wrestling move on her. And it's not just Dorothy who suddenly intrudes. My sil, Maria, who's actually my husband's biological sister, does the same. Maria is currently 21 years old. After dropping out of college and graduating from a vocational school, she's living a lazy, unemployed life at her parents' house. She claims she's in the midst of bridal training, but lounging around at our place makes me wonder, really, in what way? Like Dorothy, she demands meals, but when asked to help, she peeled potatoes to the size of taro roots. When I asked her to add roux to the beef stew, she used up all the newly bought roux. Her excuse as she fled was, "I'm still training." What kind of training is she doing at her parents' house? Peeling vegetables an inch thick, enduring overly salty beef stew? It's obviously unhealthy, and there's no way I, a pregnant woman, can eat it. Of course, neither Dorothy nor Maria ate it, so the food was just wasted. And whenever they come to our house, they lounge around for hours and don't leave. When I ask if it's okay to leave John, my Phil, alone, Dorothy says, he likes being alone, but I know her phone is constantly ringing. I caught a glimpse of her phone display, and the caller was John. Clearly, he's telling her to come home soon. In the end, they both stay until Ethan comes home, and if I'm too tired to prepare dinner, all three go out to eat. What about my dinner? This is the worst. So, with all this going on, I'm really frustrated with Ethan, who is cold to my mother and only cares about his own parents and sister. I'm also angry with Brazen Dorothy and Maria. I was thinking of returning to my hometown soon, but then Dorothy said something outrageous.
It's our precious first grandchild. How can you even think of going back to your hometown for childbirth? First birth, that's no concern of mine. I raised 2 children myself, and I commend you not to go back. Stay at home.
I protested against this, but Ethan was of no help, siding with his mother, saying, "Mom is right." Dorothy wouldn't listen to reason. Maria echoed the same sentiments. Realizing it was futile, I agreed to forego going back to my hometown. But when I suggested that my mother help after the baby was born, that was also rejected. This is ridiculous. Time for some drastic measures. Eventually, I safely gave birth to my daughter. She was the first grandchild for both families, and everyone was overjoyed. I was happy, of course, but even more relieved that she was finally here. I had planned to focus on recovering my strength until discharge. But of course, Dorothy and Maria just had to show up unannounced. And not just any time, but outside visiting hours. Completely unacceptable. And then they both have the nerve to say, "What's with that face, Jessica? We're here. You should be happier." There's no vending machine in this hospital. "Jessica, we'll look after the baby. Go and buy us something," Maria demanded, nearly pushing me to the edge. But before I could react, a nurse lost her temper, and the two were practically kicked out of the hospital. Unhappy with that, they bombarded me with calls and messages all night. I had turned off my phone, so seeing the history the next morning was quite shocking. And so, I was discharged in that situation. I wondered what would happen next, but surprisingly, Dorothy and Maria didn't show up. Apparently, John, my Phil, had scolded them to be more considerate. John, good job. While it was a relief that Dorothy and Maria weren't around, back at home, my useless and even more troublesome husband was waiting. As soon as I returned home with the baby, he said, "Hurry up and make some food." The future didn't look bright. So, starting the next day, Margaret, my mother, began coming over to help. "She's adorable, looks just like you were as a baby," Margaret said, her face beaming with joy. I really wanted her to stay over instead of just visiting, but I couldn't impose on her that much. And then there was Ethan to consider. I knew for sure he would start complaining if he bumped into her. So, she had to leave before Ethan got back home. When Margaret was about to leave, an hour before Ethan's usual return time, he unexpectedly came home. "Why? What are you doing home early?"
Well, my boss told me to come home early since the baby was born, so lucky me.
"Lucky? No way. You don't do anything, so there's no need for you to come home early." I couldn't complain since his boss was being considerate, but this unexpected turn of events left me flustered. And there, Ethan and Margaret faced each other.
Why is your mother here?
Ethan looked startled. Then, from behind him, "What? Jessica's mom is here." Now it was my turn to be taken aback. To my surprise, Dorothy peeked out from behind Ethan. And then Maria appeared as well. Weren't they supposed to be laying low after John scolded them? Wait, John is on a business trip, and they decided to come over. Margaret, caught in this unbelievable situation because of Ethan, Dorothy, and Maria. I thought Ethan would at least pretend to be nice in front of my mom, but he made an obviously displeased face upon seeing her.
Why is your mother here?
I asked her to help because postpartum has been tough.
What? Of course, I don't like her coming over without asking. I've told you this before, haven't I? Why do you do things on your own?
Ethan frowned at my response. His face was so infuriating. He glared at me with a look as if he had just sucked on an incredibly sour lemon. But, I desperately wanted to yank on Ethan's annoying face. But I restrained myself and tried to argue back when Dorothy pushed him aside and stepped forward.
Wait a minute, Jessica. Do you even understand your place?
As soon as she stepped up, she pointed her finger at me and accused. My place?
You're part of our family now, right? Why are you letting a stranger into our house?
No, that's my mother.
The moment you got married, you became our DIL, and your real home became here, with me as your parent. Don't do things on your own.
But I'm still recovering from giving birth.
So I can't stand it. Modern DIL are so unreasonable. Back in my day, even postpartum, everything in the house was done perfectly. I mean, when I...
Oh, this is going to be a long story. It's tough listening to this when I'm still feeling weak postpartum. Just as I was thinking this, Dorothy said, "We can lecture her later." To my astonishment, suddenly Dorothy began pushing my mother, Margaret, from behind. Wait, what are you doing, Dorothy?
We'll take care of our precious grandchild. You, stranger, please leave.
She said that and pushed my mother out. Stunned by the sudden turn of events, my mother left without saying a word. How could you? My mother was just trying to help me. I glared at Dorothy and Ethan, outraged by their behavior. But it was 2 against 1.
Just sit down over there.
Under the glare of Dorothy, Ethan, and Maria, I was forced to sit formally and endlessly lectured, struggling postpartum. What followed was hell. Dorothy and Maria came over almost every day. Sometimes they even stayed overnight. But they did nothing, just lounged around. When they were hungry, they made me go shopping or cook. They left their mess for me to clean up, and the laundry was also my responsibility. Cleaning the dirty house, of course, fell to me. On top of that, they only sporadically cared for the baby, mostly neglecting her. I found myself single-handedly managing the household chores, taking care of Dorothy and Maria, and tending to the baby. I was in a situation where collapsing wouldn't have been surprising, but I somehow held on. It was pure stubbornness. A stubbornness that said I wouldn't be defeated by such people. With determination and grit, I somehow survived those hellish days. And then, 5 years passed. I am now 32, and my lovely daughter Emma is 5 years old. Girls mature fast, I had heard, but I was really feeling it now. She had become quite articulate, and typical of today's girls, very strong-willed. After being toughened by the hellish days with Ethan, Dorothy, and Maria, I made sure to raise Emma so she wouldn't be influenced by those 3. The result?
Emma, can you go buy some candy for Grandma?
No.
My 5-year-old daughter splendidly refused to run errands for a grandma who tried to send a child shopping.
Emma, can you give Daddy a shoulder massage?
No.
Ethan, who remained unchanged even after our child was born, still did neither housework nor childcare. He never changed a diaper. He never took her to the park. On weekends, he either went out alone or just lounged around at home. So naturally, Emma didn't grow close to him.
Emma, can you massage Grandma's shoulders?
Absolutely not. No.
Despite Dorothy's persistent attempts, Emma naturally didn't warm up to her. Inside, I laughed devilishly, relishing Dorothy and Ethan's obliviousness.
What's wrong with your daughter, Jessica?
Dorothy was furious, but I could easily brush off her comments, feeling my newfound strength.
She's become disrespectful because you started working early and left her in daycare.
Well, what can I say? She's sweet to me. Maybe she just doesn't like your face, Dorothy.
What did you just say?
I had blurted out my true feelings, but instead of panicking, I found myself laughing at Dorothy's red-faced anger. I had truly become stronger. Realizing arguing was futile, Dorothy just glared at me but said nothing more. Seizing the opportunity, I tried to get back to work on my computer when suddenly, Dorothy started a new topic. You know, Maria just gave birth. I tried to ignore her, but she abruptly closed my laptop. Even as I glared at her, wondering what she was doing, Dorothy remained unfazed. She continued to disrupt my work, turning to talk to Ethan.
The marriage order may have been different, with the pregnancy coming first, but it's still a happy occasion. I'm thinking of going to the hospital tomorrow. Ethan, will you join?
I realized that arguing with Dorothy's actions was pointless. Instead, I replied with a sly smile. Oh yes, I've heard about that. Congratulations.
Since you have a job and earn, you should give a generous gift.
But Dorothy, you won't be able to see Maria, being a stranger and all.
What?
A gift, really? I have no interest in celebrating strangers.
What are you talking about, even if Maria is your sil?
No, Dorothy. Didn't you tell me? Once married, a DIL belongs to her husband's family, and her own family becomes strangers. Remember how you chased my mother away, calling her a stranger?
What?
Maybe Dorothy had forgotten, but I hadn't, even after 5 years. Faced with my stare, Dorothy faltered.
Jessica, what are you saying?
You said it too, right? When Ethan tried to back up Dorothy, I glared at him, making him falter as well. You said my parents are strangers, didn't you? You wouldn't let them see Emma. You left me alone postpartum, forcing out my mother who was trying to help, while you and your family did nothing but exploit me. Ethan, you didn't help either, did you?
What? But you're the wife.
Gotcha. I recorded that on my phone, because you're the wife. So you all think a DIL should naturally serve her in-law's family, right? That she shouldn't rely on her own parents, right? Then the same should apply to your daughter Maria. I said this with a sly grin, phone in hand. Ethan and Dorothy panicked.
Hey, don't mess around. This situation with my sister Maria and you is different.
That's right, Maria is my dear daughter. Don't be ridiculous.
They both started blaming me. I calmly set my phone on the table, took a sip of tea, and I took a deep breath before shouting, "You two are the ridiculous ones." They both jumped back in shock. With a thud, I put one foot on the low table and rested my elbow on my knee. I glared fiercely at the two of them, who were practically losing their balance in front of me. Take responsibility for your own words. Grown-ups shouldn't be spouting such nonsense.
Oh, sorry, so sorry.
Don't think an apology will fix this. I've been waiting for this day for a long time. As I chuckled menacingly, their faces turned pale. I was well aware of the villainous look on my face. You turned my own parents away, so now it's only fair that you deal with the consequences. Only John needs to visit Maria's baby. Need help? You don't need that, do you? I've already informed John why you won't be going to Maria's. I'm sure the news will quickly reach Maria's husband.
What did you say?
By the way, I've recorded this entire conversation and plan to send the audio to Maria's husband.
What?
It's amazing what you can do with just a phone these days. Collecting evidence is a breeze. As I smirked, Dorothy teared up. So, Emma and I will be leaving this house.
What?
Ethan's dumbfounded voice echoed as I announced our departure.
Leaving? What are you talking about?
I have a good job now and my own income. I'll take child support, but I don't need you anymore.
What?
You never helped with the house, showed no care for me, were indifferent to parenting, didn't play with Emma, and we barely talk. Do you think such a husband is necessary?
I do.
As Ethan nodded vigorously to my question, I shouted back, I don't, and grabbed Emma's hand.
Emma, you want to be with Daddy, right?
In desperation, Ethan tried to cling to our daughter as his last resort. But
I don't need you.
Ethan slumped in defeat. I had planned to leave Ethan if he retaliated against my actions. Once I heard Maria was pregnant, I started planning to leave the house. I had already found a new place. Soon after, Emma and I left the house. Negotiations through lawyers concluded, and Ethan successfully became my ex-husband. Distrusting him, I demanded a lump sum for child support. Ethan was left with nothing. Our joint savings were divided, but Ethan had hardly saved anything. John, my former Phil, ended up covering the shortfall in child support. He had always been displeased with Ethan and Dorothy's behavior. John, too, was reportedly fed up with the selfishness of Ethan and Dorothy, the like-minded parent and child. John and Dorothy also ended up divorcing. There was a division of property, but Dorothy, who had never worked, struggled to live on her own. She eventually moved in with Ethan, but they were burdened with debts to John and lived in poverty. Eventually, Ethan and Dorothy ended up moving into a shabby apartment together. There, the two of them are said to be shivering in the drafty apartment, surviving on simple meals every day. Maria, my former Sil, also divorced. Her marriage was based on a pregnancy, and her lack of domestic skills was later discovered. Her husband took care of the house, but Maria took advantage and neglected their baby. One day, she was caught leaving the child alone for hours to gamble, leading to divorce and the husband taking custody. Maria, too, joined Ethan and Dorothy in their impoverished apartment. With Dorothy and Maria's lack of income, Ethan couldn't sustain a decent life. Their utilities were cut off, and they live in poverty now. This information came from John. It was a case of reaping what they sowed, and I couldn't help but laugh. As for Emma and me, we're enjoying our life together. Our new home is close to my parents, and they frequently visit us. Emma loves her grandparents who play with her, and she's very attached to them. In stark contrast to her expressionless and cold demeanor towards Ethan and Dorothy, Emma is a childlike child, hugging my mother with a smile. Seeing Emma's smile, I think to myself that divorcing was the right decision. As I hope Emma doesn't end up like Ethan and others who can't do anything, I hear her voice saying, "Mom, I cleaned up my plates properly. Now I'm going to fold the laundry." Even without parents, a child can still grow up well. Seeing my daughter growing up so wonderfully, I gently wiped away a tear of happiness.